Alright, hi everybody, how's it going? And welcome to another video. Now I hope everyone has had a great New Year's. I wish everyone well. I know 2020 was difficult for a lot of people, so I wish everyone a happy and prosperous 2021. Now, what I want to do today is I want to do a movie review, and the movie I'll be reviewing today is Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior. Now, this film came out in late 1981 in Australia. In the United States, it came out in 1982, I believe, and it was a huge success. This was a huge success. It was made by an individual by the name of George Miller, and George Miller was actually a physician. However, he was a physician who was a film buff. He wanted to make movies. He had been thinking about different scripts that he might want to use and different ideas. In 1973 in Australia, there was an oil crisis, and George Miller had witnessed people at gas stations and at gas pumps getting into fights over gasoline because of this oil crisis. So he began to think about how that might make a good plot for a movie. So he then teamed up with a journalist and they wrote a script, and they were going to call the film Mad Max. They then were looking for actors. George Miller went to the United States to try to find an actor for this film. He went to Los Angeles, didn't find anybody. He then thought that this one Irish actor who was living in Australia might be good for the part. He showed him the script. I guess the guy was working in a slaughterhouse at the time. He showed the actor the script. He didn't like it. He did not like the dialogue. He thought the film was beneath him. So then George Miller went to this acting academy where you had a young actor who had either just graduated or was graduating, and his name was Mel Gibson, and he auditioned for the role. George Miller thought he was perfect for the part, and he cast Mel Gibson as Mad Max. And then the film Mad Max was made on a budget of $350,000, and the film would go on to gross $100 million worldwide. It was the most profitable film ever made at that time. It wasn't until the Blair Witch Project came out in 1999 where it was overtaken. It was the most profitable film ever made, Mad Max. The most profitable film before Mad Max actually came out a year before Mad Max in 1978, and that was the film Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween. So Mad Max was a huge success when it came out in 1979. In Australia at that time, there were some action movies that were coming out. There weren't a whole lot. There were a lot of art films, but there were some action movies. There was a movie that came out in 1974 called Stone, and that was a biker film. And a lot of the bikers who were in Stone in 1974 were also in Mad Max. Also had some other films. He had a movie that was very similar to Carrie that came out in 1978 called Patrick. You had another film that was kind of like a rock film that came out in the mid-70s in Australia, because at that time rock films were big, and it was called, I believe it was called Oz, and it was about this girl, kind of like a Dorothy person who's looking for this Wizard of Oz, but he's kind of like a glam rock wizard. It was a rock film. Rock films were pretty big in the mid-70s at that point. Anyways, this film came out called Mad Max, and like I said, it did very well. They had actual biker gangs in this film. There were two rival biker gangs that were in this film. They actually became friends while working on this film together and then formed one big biker gang. So, anyways, yeah, this film would make Mel Gibson famous. Then what happened was the director of the film, George Miller, then wanted to make another film, so he began working on a rock film. However, the film wasn't going well, and there was demand for a Mad Max 2, so he agreed to make a Mad Max 2. Now, Mad Max 2 had a much bigger budget, a budget of over $2 million. It was the most expensive film made in Australia at that time. Cost, like I said, over $2 million to make. And Mad Max 2 ended up being a huge success. Now, I'm going to talk about the film. There are going to be spoilers. Film has been out for a while, but if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert. Anyways, the film starts out with some narration of a narrator talking about some kind of a big war that took place. So this is going to be post-apocalyptic. And there was then, the narrator tells like a gas shortage, and that these gangs controlled the highways, and that they would stop people, get their gas, and, most likely kill them. So that's what happens, and that's how this film starts. Mad Max is now driving down the highway in this, like barren land. It was actually filmed in the Australian outback in New South Wales in the wintertime. And Mad Max is driving down this highway. These marauders immediately follow him because they want his gas. Mad Max also wants gas. So what happens, there's a car chase scene. Eventually, the marauders flee. Mad Max finds this gyrocopter, and as he approaches the gyrocopter, the gyro pilot jumps out. It was some kind of like booby trap of some sort, and immediately Mad Max overpowers the guy and asks the guy, where can I find gasoline? The individual then shows Mad Max where there's this nearby settlement that has an oil refinery inside this like compound. So he looks, he finds this compound. However, the compound is in the process of being attacked by the marauders. Mad Max witnesses someone getting injured really badly by one of the marauders. He goes down to help the individual. The individual says, please bring me back into the compound. And they make a deal where the individual will give Mad Max his gasoline that he wants. So he brings them back into the compound. However, the settlers do not know who Mad Max is. They actually are about to kill him. However, they strike up another deal where if Mad Max will go find this tanker truck, they could use the tanker truck to fill it with oil and then bring it to their, or they could then fill it with, actually gasoline, I believe, and then take the gasoline to their settlement to the north, the promised land that they want to get to. So Mad Max agrees to do this. However, before this happens, the marauders attack again. This time you see who their leader is. And their leader is this big, muscular individual wearing a hockey mask by the name of Lord Humongous. And you could tell that the Batman villain, Bane, you could tell that the Batman villain, Bane, took influence from this Humongous character, for sure. Because Humongous is very sophisticated, speaks, is very articulate, and, a lot like how Bane was in the last Batman movie that Bane was in. So you could tell that this Humongous character did influence Bane, for sure. But anyways, what happens is this Humongous is giving a talk. He basically tells the settlers that if they just hand over their gasoline, he'll allow them safe passage and they could go to the north. They just have to hand over the gasoline. Well, they refuse to do this. There's also this feral kid that you see, and this feral kid has a boomerang. He throws the boomerang, and it swings around, hits one of the marauders in the head, killing him. Now, what happens next is Mad Max strikes a deal, like I said, with the settlers that he'll bring the tanker truck back to the compound. So he goes, gets the tanker truck. Of course, there's more car chase scenes. There's a lot of car chase scenes in this film. In fact, there's not a whole lot of dialogue. Mel Gibson only has 16 lines in the entire film. But anyways, it's known for its car chase scenes. And that's the way George Miller wanted it. He wanted this film to be kind of reminiscent of like a silent era film, like a Buster Keaton movie, where the action would kind of speak for itself. And you have that. And this film is known for its action scenes, its car chase scenes. And anyways, they're chasing Mad Max back. Mad Max takes the semi back into the compound. They close the compound. And then they give Mad Max his gasoline, but they want him to come with them to the north. They want him to drive the tanker truck to the north. He says, no, I'm done. I'm on my own. I'm going my own separate way. And he gets into his car and drives off. Well, as he drives off, he's immediately pursued by these marauders. Again, they ram him off the road. The car tumbles off the road, gets all broken up. Mad Max manages to escape from it, although it does blow up. There's this huge explosion, and one of the marauders is flying through the air, does this like somersault, and lands on the ground. The stuntman who did that actually broke his leg in that scene. However, they left the scene in the film, but he actually broke his leg in that scene. But anyways, yeah, the film was really known for its car chase scenes. There's a lot of explosions in it, too, and there's no CGI. So when you see a car getting wrecked in this film, they really wrecked it, and they wrecked a lot of cars. One car would get wrecked, they would fix the car up and wreck it again. So that's what they did in this film, and in the first Mad Max film as well. They really wrecked a lot of cars. So, anyways, what happens is the gyrocopter pilot saves Mad Max, brings him back into the compound, and now Mad Max is more empathetic to the settlers. He agrees that he'll take the tanker truck full of gasoline and drive it to the north. So they put armor on the tanker truck. They surround it with some vehicles. Some settlers get in some vehicles. They surround the tanker truck. They drive out, of course, immediately. Humongous and his men surround this tanker truck. There's, again, a big car chase scene. Lots of cars getting flipped. Some of the main characters do get shot with crossbows, and then what ends up happening is there's a head-on collision between the car that Humongous is in, the buggy that Humongous is in, and the semi that Mad Max is in. And the semi just obliterates the buggy, killing Humongous. And then they're able to go to the north. However, before they do that, the tanker truck does flip over, but it doesn't explode. And Mad Max is kind of surprised that it didn't. He then finds out that the tanker was not full of gasoline, but it was actually full of sand. They created a diversion. What they did was they filled the tanker truck full of sand. They put the actual drums of gasoline aboard buses and then drove to the north. So that's what happens. And you find out, because there's some narration at the end of the movie, you find out that the narrator is actually the feral child that was in the movie. That's the narrator. And you also find out that the gyro pilot becomes the first leader in their settlement in the north. Then the feral child eventually becomes the leader of the settlement. And as for Mad Max, they don't know what happened to him. He just disappeared. Reminiscent of those types of characters. Mad Max is the archetypal lone gunman type character that you have in a number of westerns like Fistful of Dollars. Clint Eastwood played a character like that. He's basically that kind of an archetype, the lone gunman. And he plays that character. And although Mad Max only has 16 lines in the film, he definitely makes those lines count. But anyways, the film then ends. This film was a huge success in the United States this time because it did get a proper release. Initially, the film just didn't get a proper release in the United States. The dubbing, there was some dubbing because they wanted to dub the film, the first Mad Max film, because they didn't think Americans would understand the Australian slang. So yeah, there was some dubbing with the first one. It didn't have a big release, so that's why Mad Max 1 didn't do well in the United States. But Mad Max 2 did. They called it the Road Warrior because they didn't think people would want to see a movie that was called Mad Max 2 because they'd be like, well, who is this character? When did Mad Max 1 come out? I don't remember that movie coming out. So in Australia, it was called Mad Max 2, but in the United States, it was called The Road Warrior. And The Road Warrior is a cool title, you have to admit. This film was hugely influential on American culture. You found it in pop culture for quite a while. The anime film Fist of the North Star was clearly influenced by it, but there were other things as well that were influenced by this. I mean, you had metal bands like Judas Priest for the Turbo album, which came out in the mid-'80s. Judas Priest had kind of a road warrior gimmick at that time. And other bands as well. Armored Saint had a video called Can You Deliver, and it has kind of a road warrior look to it. So, yeah, you would see it in metal, see it other places as well, like I said, anime. Very influential. When people talk about a post-apocalyptic setting, a lot of times the first thing they think of is Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, because it had that. I guess with Mad Max 1, they did want to give it like a post-apocalyptic look, but they didn't have the money for it. They didn't have the budget to create that post-apocalyptic look with the costumes and all that. But in the second film, they did have the budget. So, yeah, like I said, hugely influential film. Really did launch the career of Mel Gibson. He became famous after that. George Miller, the director, would go on to direct other films that were quite different, actually, like Lorenzo's Oil, Happy Feet, Witches of Eastwick, Babe. So very different films from these Mad Max films. But, yeah, like I said, very popular, very influential film. And I wanted to do a review on it because I've heard some people talk about it recently, and I hadn't seen the film in just so long. So it was definitely a movie I wanted to talk about and say a few things about. So, yeah, that's all I've got. If you watch this movie review, as always, I thank you for watching, and definitely stay safe out there, and Happy New Year.